every organization that's a nonprofit has to file what is called a 990. These are all publicly available, and most organizations, as you can see, ASON will put it on their website. However, if you just Google a nonprofit and 990, you're likely to find it. There are also websites such as some called Brightscope. Think of it almost like a little bit of a search engine, you know, just for searching for a nonprofit. And I'll open one up in a minute. Now, if it's a very small nonprofit, they will have very little information. There are just less requirements for a smaller organization to make it easier on them. So, you know, if it's one where it's only like a few $1,000s a year in donations and things like that, there aren't as many requirements for them. Think of like a small business may or may not have less. So let's start with Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. They have a 990. There is this 990EZ. That is what it kind of sounds like. It's easier. And that's usually because they are smaller, less money. So there is a CPA usually certifies, you know, there's usually an audit with the bigger ones, looking over the books, making sure, you know, everything is accounted for. So as I'm scrolling down publicly, they have their mission.
Oh, shoot.
They have the voting members, the number, the independent voting members, the individuals who are employed, you know, number of volunteers. Some organizations can have, again, unrelated business income if they had something for the nonprofit that may or may not be generating income. They show the prior year and the current year. And it also, again, especially as you get bigger, some of just how they may do accounting is, you know, when they get the grant versus sometimes they're restricted. It's complicated accounting stuff. So you can see how much ASAN on this line paid for, you know, salary. That was a large part of their budget. You can see how much assets they have. You can see their expenses. And if you remember on that very nice graphic, they went over it a bit for us. So here is their statement and accomplishments. And again, all of this is audited, so it filed with the IRS. You know, of course, a nonprofit, you know, is not going to say they did horrible things, and you assume that none are. But you know, it is their words, even if truthful. So again, we're here, program expenses. And I might scroll through a little bit. And again, Section 501c3, when we hear a nonprofit, that's almost certainly what we mean. There are some other types for like, for example, political organizations that aren't deductible, but that's not really what we're looking at here. So I'm just scrolling down. Did the organization do this? The rest of this is usually pretty boring. I'm seeing if there's anything exciting. I have not looked at this until today, although I've looked at other 990s. So here's something interesting. So we went over how much any of the board of directors is paid and average hours per week, you know, in the organization, the position, and again, if any compensation, if any. So there's chairperson, the secretary is an important position. I know it almost sounds like maybe it isn't. Many also have a treasurer. I don't see one, which is perfectly fine. I am usually asked to be a treasurer, which makes sense in theory, but I am unable to be a treasurer because it is a conflict. It's ironic. So they're saying, again, they got so much in government grants, membership dues. You know, this is a very not complicated 990. All things considered, they're not small by any means, but they're not huge either. So again, it was Julie, who's the board of directors. So this is her compensation. That's not uncommon at all, especially for smaller nonprofits. A lot of larger ones, that is not there. And again, you can see just other fees, services, advertising, you can see fundraising, meals, subscriptions, all of this is all available to see how anyone did all of it. Okay, I'm kind of even bored looking at it now. So let me just see if there's anything else remotely interesting before I move on to another 990. Does anyone have any questions? And it is fun to see the history too. Okay. So this is, what do we have here? Oh, contributors. So again, you have who's contributed to the organization. It's all right here. I can't recall off the top of my head all of the necessary requirements. Some of them can be grants and other things, and I think it's only above a certain dollar amount. You do also have to report lobbying and political activities if there are any. Because if you're a, you know, remember I said there was another type of 501c something for political organizations that aren't deductible. So that is one of the reasons it's asked to be there. Okay, moving on. Can anyone guess what 990 I'm going to look at next? It's not a hard guess. Okay, we're going to look at Autism Speaks 990. Okay.
Yeah, let's.
There we go. So this is Autism Speaks 990. They are, without question, a bigger organization. So there's probably going to be more information here. And what you can see is this is what their mission is. You can see the number of members of the board. You can see it's quite a lot. 216 employees, and our total number of volunteers, 188,000 seems like a lot of volunteers. I don't know what their basis is for volunteers. That, you know, actually is kind of curious. Contribution and grants. Again, when you see a discrepancy this big, you know, it could be somebody gave a large amount of money that may or may not be accessible for a long time. And by the way, anything I'm saying, please don't construe as promoting, defending, or insulting any organization. I'm just saying, generally speaking, some things that I, you know, may or may not see, just looking through these before. Accounting is a, you know, business for a reason. So here is, again, filed the IRS, etc. And if there's a question or two, Becca, and I miss it, feel free to interrupt me.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm covering it. I got you.
Okay. Again, here is their mission. I don't see anything about a cure or eugenics. That doesn't mean they're not hiding it in a secret basement somewhere. Anyway, okay. Moving on. So here is stuff that they did. Remember, it is in their own their own words. They are obviously going to try to speak a bit more highly of themselves and say what they're doing. So, you know, aided, again, 4.1 million people, you know, provided online toolkit. So there's, I mean, it seems like, again, from these reports, right, 335 meetings with congressional leaders convened to address disparities related to autism. Now, if this one seems more detailed, a lot of it is just because they're a larger organization. That doesn't mean, a smaller organization isn't doing things. There's just more reporting required. Moving on. So you can see who is the CEO, how much they make. And I mean, it's all right there. It's all transparent. So you can see, I think Angela stepped down recently. And again, here are the directors. And this is, and you could compare this salary to like the American Red Cross, other larger nonprofits. You can also see, very interestingly, does anyone notice how much the board of directors spends per week with Autism Speaks? It's a rhetorical question, kind of. It's only 1 hour a week, supposedly, which I don't think you can put. It's probably not even that. You can see ASAN, I mean, it was 10 to 15, right? It was quite a bit. Again, also not uncommon for a smaller nonprofit. Actually, some bigger nonprofits I've been a part of have even specifically asked me not to participate in some day-to-day operations, not in any negative way. So, but this is, that goes to show you how useful their board of directors is. Hint, hint, it means about zero, even though they technically run it, right? With the smaller organizations, the board of directors are really running it in a lot of ways, donating their time, not their money. Autism Speaks, their board of directors are there, but for anyone who thinks that, a board of directors meetings for the most part really decides anything of significance in a large organization is mistaken. If all the Autistics were suddenly board of directors of Autism Speaks, not much would change that quickly at the end of the day, because they're also not the ones to implement it. I'm gonna
pause. Can I pause you for a second right there? So again, to me, this is like another thing, big organization versus small organization, right? So the bigger organizations get, right, the more stagnant, to me, the boards get, right? And the less they require of their board members, right? And so what you see here, right, like we had, was it like 200 and something employees, right? So instead of looking at the board in terms of helping to make decisions and making things move forward in a large organization, the board's job is basically to sit through a meeting and have the annual report like read to them essentially, right? And then they all go, okay, everything's fine. So like the board is about those long-term decision-making things, right? And how the direction you want the organization to go, where you want most of your donations to go, that kind of stuff is what eventually lands on the board's desk. But who they hire, who they fire, what programs they do, when they have campaigns on things, that's usually a day-to-day operations thing, right? The board doesn't really get bothered with, other than like the big term decisions, like, does this date work for you? And stuff like this. So when we're looking at that, I want you guys to understand that the 15 hours that the folks on ASAN board are giving in, right, they are actually doing all the work. If you saw, it was a very small board, right? It was only, I think, 6 or 7 people. And this board will be much bigger. And these people on the board will have many secretaries, right? And it's that kind of thing, so it's less hands-on for the board, the bigger an organization gets, right? I just, at this time, I'm just gonna throw this out there because it really shocked me to see the imbalance between employees and volunteers there. And then to kind of get a glimpse at the salary that folks are getting, it to me is no wonder that their staff is so small and they have so many volunteers. It's like they're trying to keep their staff small to pay, so they can pay them a lot, right? Instead of having a larger staff and sort of spreading it out a bit. So that's a little weird to me, that it's a huge imbalance. So I don't know how they're training their volunteers and all of that kind of stuff.
I also don't, Yeah, I also don't know what their definition of a volunteer is, because almost 200,000 is really high. Like
yeah.
that's like shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, we, you know, I don't know if we have the time on this meeting, but like I'd want to look at a comparison, like maybe the National Special Olympics or the Arc of the United
Right.
States would be,
Yep.
you know, a good example as a comparison, just because they're all, you know, again, a similar size.
Right.
Now, there are, remember I did mention there are websites like I mentioned called Brightscope or some others that will help make this information a little potentially easier to find. It's not always like as up to date or completely accurate, especially as you get a smaller organization. So again, you have grants, you have compensation, you have other salary, you know, you can see there's lobbying, you know, again, legal, accounting, all this fun stuff. You know, I'm just seeing if there's anything else exciting, you know. And they named some of it right here. So this genome sequencing, that's all the eugenics that we hear about all the time. That was sarcasm. Well, maybe not. But anyway, moving on.
We scroll past their advertising budget too.
Yeah. It was there.
I'm just curious. Now I'm just being nosy and curious because it's open.
Well, they break it down a few different ways because like direct mail is obviously advertising.
Right.
Oh, there you go. Advertising and promotion, $7 million.
Oh, I'm dying inside. Okay.
So that is how much they spent. Now, there are, just so you know, there are statistics that say if you spend this much on advertising and on mail, that you should get a return on investment this much because people get the letter in the mail, etc. Kind of one of those spend money to make money kind of things. Again, donor restrictions and all that stuff can get complicated. Somebody says they donate money for a certain purpose. It can only be used for that. How all this accounting works. It's even giving me a headache at this point. So trying to look at it. And then I just want to see if there's anything else remotely interesting. Again, gift grants, contributions. Let's see. I just want to, if anyone has any questions while I'm scrolling through. Think. Okay, so again, political lobbying. Here is some supplemental information, again, about things they say they did. And that, again, they're saying they do. And you won't need to take this pretty well. There's, you know, again, you're filing true IRS forms. You're filing very strict legal documents, right? I would be extremely shocked if any charity, you know, lied on a form like this. That doesn't mean that they're not going to present themselves in a good light, but it's always, you know, it should always be factual. You should take it for what it's worth. If you find that it isn't, that is something I would definitely inquire to them about, and they should be able to provide that. I don't know the consequences for not doing it, but I'm sure they're not good if you're not living up to what you're doing. So here are things that they did. So let's see if there's anything else interesting on all these pages. What was that? If you don't understand what a lot of these things are, I don't either, so don't feel bad. Grant making, let's see. Well, okay. Was that they gave a $50 grant to the sub-Saharan Africa? Oh, 50,000. Okay, that's significant. $50 would be insignificant. So I think this might be, I know they distribute lots of grants as well. So I think that's part of what it is. So here's fundraising events, gross receipts from different events and the gala and golf events. And here's the rent cost, direct expenses. And let's see direct mail. Remember I said that there's it's like common, like I've taken courses and it's there's a ratio and it's a thing. So here you have who has given money as grants for the organizations. ASAN had the same thing. So just scrolling, financial assistance, CARES grants, some of these were like money donated for them to give out. Like I actually know this one is like somebody donated money and then they ask Autism Speaks to like every year, like administer like who might be worthy of it. It's a thing. I mean, I don't, fully understand it. Just seeing if there's anything else interesting. So this was, again, the compensation for each, person on the, these are the highest paid. There are, it doesn't show the complete salary of, everyone there. So.
Oh, that is a lovely bonus to get there.
Yeah. So, so, okay, see, here's the reason. So this was approved by the board of directors and the bonus was based upon meeting certain goals reviewed by a compensation committee. This is not uncommon, especially in larger nonprofits, even larger companies, etc. You hit a certain metric, either however that's metric is named, if you are the organization gets there, kind of like getting a stock bonus. I'm not defending it or encouraging it. I'm just saying it's a
I'm not, what bothers me is not that they do it, because I know that that's regular practice. What bothers me is the amounts that we're talking about. Right? I mean, it's hard to swallow $7 million in advertising. Like to people who don't even like their advertising.
But but maybe to put it in perspective too, right? I don't have the perspective. But if somebody approached me today and they said, Andrew, if you advertise $7 million, we're going to get you 14 million in donations. Right. I would say, okay, sounds good. Right. So I'm just, again, everything's in perspective.
I get that part, but then I would say to you, well, Andrew, now that you have $14 million, what are you going to do? And I would surely hope that you wouldn't spend another $7 million on advertising again. Right. I mean, at what point, do you start looking at, well, I guess, because when I look at organization stuff, I guess I look at it slightly different and I wonder like who's in charge of where you're spending your money and why does it look so imbalanced to me? Right.
And if you want to question an organization, these are great questions to ask. They should have the answers. They are, this is, I'm sure there's a very high penalty of perjury provision with anything they're sending here, right? They should be accountable. I mean, they're not going to completely turn over everything, but, nobody's going to turn over like all their internal documents all the time.
Right.
But they should be able to, answer where their money's going. That because let's say I'm a, prospective donor, right? And I see that they bring in this money. I see where they spent it. I want to make sure my money is going right where I want it to go. So And
that's why we get those donors that donate money for a specific reason, because they want control over where it gets spent. Right? They don't want to donate and then find out that all their money went to advertising when they really wanted to help in a certain way through the organization. So I know that's where that kind of stuff comes from. But see, like, to me, this is so important. I look at, I don't know about you guys, I'm not a money person, right? I don't look at it like a financial person. But when I look at it as a business person, I go, who's making these decisions? And like, what metric did this lady hit that she deserves $450,000 bonus, right? When most of her constituents are getting $900 from the government a month.
That is
so if it was me, and when I go to donate and stuff, that's the stuff that I look at. Like, I don't want to participate in poor decision making. I don't want to give my money to an organization I feel like is making unwise decisions, right? So that's how I look at it, I guess. Maybe it's slightly different than from like a financial perspective and legal perspective.
No, and that's honestly how most people should be looking at things. And you can see they literally just filed their 2020, not too long ago. I'm actually even surprised it's up this quickly. Usually there's a bit of a delay, but you can see there's a compensation committee. There's committees of committees with tons of wasted time. But they're saying, again, several national nonprofits, similar size and scope, right? So they, at least in their mind, they are justified in what they are doing. And again, there is something to be said for, paying a competitive rate. It's from other large nonprofits that I, look at. The bonus, I don't know what metric she hit, but it's not, as board of alumni for like one of my colleges I went to, and the numbers and the compensation were roughly similar. So if you want to make an impact, and you want to make an impact and have your dollar go the furthest, who do you think really appreciates $1,000? Autism Speaks, who has over $20 million in their bank account, or, ASAN. I am not saying who you should give your money to. I think you should give your money to whoever you want. Generally speaking, though, a smaller nonprofit, just like a small business, will appreciate it more. Target won't notice whether you go there or not today. Me and Becca will notice if you decide to do business with us. That doesn't mean that I will ever boycott Target. I'm pretty sure my wife would murder me for that. And actually, I do think Target would notice if my wife did stop shopping there. Probably. So, which is probably a scary thought. So this is what we want to go over today. We thought it was kind of timely. I apologize if it seemed a little extra boring. But this is just type in Google the nonprofit and 990, and
Well, see, what I love about this topic is it doesn't matter where you sit on these things. Fact is fact, right?
Exactly.
And so when we talk about organizations and where we're supporting, this is, to me, the real way, and probably I would say the right way to choose where you're donating, right? It's super easy to get caught up in, just whatever you're doing, or someone is part of an organization, and so you donate there because this person is there, right? It's easy to get into a habit too of donating to the same place, right? Like, you can set up automatic donations and things now. But I think it's important that you're part of a process, right? It's a consumerism when we are dealing with, even though they're quote unquote nonprofits, they're still a business, right? And you don't want to support businesses that you don't think run well. And you certainly wouldn't dunk your money into an organization that you feel is not doing a good job, or isn't handling their money well, or isn't making decisions that you agree with. And so it's not, it's real easy these days to donate. Facebook makes it easy to start a fundraiser and finish a fundraiser, and easy for you to give somebody $10 here and there. But I think we need to remember that there's information out there, and it is public and available and easy to get to, right? That is fact and can give you the real truth instead of, playing telephone with people or passing gossip or whatever it is, because fact is fact. And when you compare the two organizations like we just did, what you saw is small organization versus large organization, right? Big kind of corporate organization, small grassroots organization, and the way that they're put together. And it's up to you to decide when and where you want to support what organizations, but know that you don't have to make those choices blindly.